A great book that I came across in the library, The Basics Economics by Tony Cleaver. So, Tony Cleaver is Vice Master of Grey College and lecturer in the Department of Economics and Finance at the University of Durham, UK. The book will act as a bridge between the transition from high school to college. It touches on all the major topics that are relevant to today's understanding of economics and presents concepts in a clear, lively, and easy to understand manner. So, something written in praise of the book, as you can see. This book offers an excellent and engaging written introduction to economics. Another praise of book, and then we have Economics, the Basics, provides a fascinating introduction to the key issues in contemporary economics with case studies ranging from the coffee plantation of El Salvador to the enactment to the international oil industry and the economic slowdown in Japan. It addresses fundamental issues such as whether economic growth is always bad for the environment, or what impact multinational companies and the WTO have on developing countries, or how price markets, supply and demand, interact across the world, how money comes to have worth, and how this is regulated, how unemployment affects inflation. The book is comprehensive and easy to read. This accessible guidebook is essential reading for anyone who wants to understand how economics works and why it is important. So, it's a very interesting book. If you look at the contents, it is wealth and poverty, second, prices, markets and coffee, third, the business of supply, fourth, inflation and unemployment, boom and bust, fifth is money, banks, bubbles and crisis, sixth is national income, world trade and multinational enterprise, and seventh is can we reduce poverty and protect the environment. So the first lesson is wealth and poverty. Uh, on page 2, I'm reading from there. Economics has been described as the science of choice. In the face of limited resources, human society has evolved systems of decision making that choose whose wants are to have priority, in what manner resources are to be exploited, and whether in the end we make guns of bread or butter. So here on page 3 they've shown that the earth's riches are consumed more by some than by the others. Can be quickly demonstrated. Consider an A to Z of the world's nation. One quick measure of relative wealth is the purchasing power of the average citizen in, say, Austria compared to Zambia, Bangladesh compared to the US. The World Bank gives the data shown in figures 1.1 and 1.2 over the year 2000. So, what do you notice in figure 1.1? US average income per capita. So, US dollar average income per capita, purchasing power parity. So, if you compare Austria with Zambia, or just see, like for example, it is 24,600 Austria, Bangladesh is 1,530, USA is 31,910, and Zambia is 720. So one can know where one stands. So who's rich, who's poor. And another way is primary energy consumed per person, tons of oil equivalent. So again, A to Z, Austria, Bangladesh, USA, and Zambia, and Africa, sorry. So here you have Austria 3.14, Bangladesh is 0.1, USA is 8.35, and Africa is 0.14. For example, they've given a case study of El Salvador in the vulnerability of traditional economic practice. So in 1839, El Salvador became independent from Spain, and for some years thereafter, the country remained traditionally agricultural with high birth and death rates. A small and stable population, yet with sufficient fertile land to provide for all, with no great extremes of poverty or wealth. And it goes on. Very interesting, you must read it. El Salvador was eventually transformed economically, politically, and socially. Coffee dominated the economy. And today, if you see, El Salvador is now a country where economic growth has occurred, though its benefits have been unequally distributed. Landless rural peoples have little control over their destinies, and so the only remaining tradition which dictates what occupations poor people follow, what goods they produce, and how they produce them, is the continuing tradition of economic powerlessness. Their choices today are, in fact, more limited than in the past, thanks to the institutions that have overturned earlier social custom and have reshaped their society. So, so here he talks about the opportunity cost and says the most fundamental concept in economics is opportunity cost. So if you choose to use resources in one employment, then you must sacrifice the opportunity to use them in some other way. It is an old adage, you can't have your cake and eat it too. This sacrifice is frequently described as a trade off. For example, if we use native forests to construct homes, build ships, and fuel the fires of industry, then society must trade this off against retaining the natural habitat for wild animals to roam free. So, for any growth or anything, there is an opportunity cost involved. That's what economics teaches you, and we have to prioritize. So, it is in the nature of economics that sacrifices must be made. The issue, therefore, becomes one of being as efficient and equitable as possible. Keep the opportunity cost of economic development to minimum so we do not have to trade off too much of one to gain more of the other. So there's this chapter number 7. Can we reduce poverty and protect the environment? So this final chapter brings together a number of concepts, themes, and theories introduced and analyzed in the preceding pages. We are thus finally able to examine the two important questions that opened this text. how to improve living standard for all without sacrificing the needs of future generations. Economics is concerned with scarcity and the need for choice. Clearly, if Earth's resources were limitless, then there would be no need to economize on anything. But instead, humankind's ideals must always be constrained by the finite means at our disposal. Since we cannot always have everything, we are faced with trade offs. What goals do we seek to prioritize, and what do we therefore have to sacrifice? He writes, humankind's ingenuity is the only resource that is not in short supply and shows no sign of reaching exhaustion. Although there are problems, scientists and economists can come together and calculate the costs and benefits of each and every practice that seems to threaten the environment and make their recommendations accordingly. The political will to apply the political will to apply our energies to safeguard the future is hard to come by, but successes like the Montreal Protocol in 1987, which agreed to phase out the production of CFCs and protect the ozone layer, show that however difficult international accord is possible. So I finish on a note of caution, he writes. However, the poor world cannot wait. Some countries are already growing fast and others are desperate to follow in their footsteps. Having waited so long and watched how others have enjoyed the fruits of the planet without them, poor people naturally have a high preference to get rich quick and may discount the effects on the environment quite highly. So, talking about the modern mixed economy, we live in a world of constant change. What consumers demand today, they discard tomorrow as tastes and preferences move on. What producers find technically impossible this year is revolutionized next year with the latest breakthrough. In such circumstances, achieving the twin goals of efficiency and equity in any economic system is a never ending challenge. Only the most flexible and fleet footed economic organizations will survive to meet this challenge, as is evident by the demise of inefficient, centrally planned Eastern European economies that could not match the growing wealth of their Western neighbors. It is also evident in the economic stagnation of nations with inequitable regimes in sub Saharan Africa and elsewhere, which confines riches to a few and thus fail to harness the productive capacity of most of their peoples. Getting the perfect mix and market systems, government controls, and national traditions just right in any one country is frustratingly difficult since there are an infinite variety of combinations and the global economy is moving all the time. But of course, it is just this endless diversity that makes the world what it is and the study of economics so fascinating. For example, a summary of this wealth and poverty, the first lesson that we were doing. Economics analysis how analyzes how societies choose what, how, and for whom goods and services are produced. Tradition, central planning, or free markets can be employed as mechanisms to organize production and distribution. The choices made and end results achieved by different economies can be judged according to the efficiency and equity of the processes involved. The real opportunity cost of achieving any goal is measured in terms of what has been sacrificed in achieving it. Wealth is created and economies develop insofar as market trade is facilitated and enhanced by institutions that protect property, enforce contracts, and minimize risks. And so much more. I mean, there is no end to it. The book is so engaging. There's so many case studies that you'll love going through this book, along with your theoretical books that deal in microeconomics and macroeconomics. So when you read this, it makes things clearer, and you start looking at things in a better perspective. Happy reading.